Hello, my name is Liam Baum. I am a educator and musician and creative coding enthusiast. I have been a P5 teaching fellow this 2023 year, and my project was focused on curriculum building for P5JS and specifically the P5JS sound library. Um, I was basically looking to do a continuation of the available curriculum for what was available for P5JS, which currently is the Introduction to Computational Media, and also the work of Lila Quinones, who did the interactive sound art curriculum as a P5 scholar as well. She was a fellow for, I believe, 2018. So specifically what I was looking to do was look at sound synthesis, which is sort of generating sound within a P5 sketch as opposed to uploading audio files, which was something that has been covered more in both of those curriculums. Another thing I wanted to do with that was to look at P5 as more of a music making tool, myself coming from a music making background, and actually that was my entry point into coding was when I realized that it could be used for more creative musical endeavors, such as making instruments or making kind of interactive instruments like that. So my focus of this curriculum was to create interactive sketches or to have students create interactive sketches that could be used for music making. Okay, so yeah, this is the introduction. So I'm talking about what this curriculum is, which is basically everything I've said there, and kind of scroll down the focus, um, talking about sound synthesis. So this is pretty much this culmination of everything that I've just said so far. So you can see there on the left, it's 8 lessons. We start with just an introduction to the basic oscillator object, which is sort of the foundation for sound synthesis. From there, we get into just changing frequencies, changing amplitude. So some basic methods that go along with that and getting students to think about that. So yeah, you can scroll down through here. So all the lessons include an overview, objectives, durations. One of the things I really wanted to focus on was New York State standards, which is becoming a big push in computer science, at least within the New York City area. There's a whole new set of standards. So making these lessons align to those standards was important. We have vocabulary, extensive planning notes for those folks who are going to be using this. Materials, resources, there'll often be references to Introduction to Computational Media lessons as well as P5 references. There's assessments that are built in, as well as any new code. To get an idea, there's do nows, warm-ups to kind of start classes off. There's always links to materials and things like that. Any videos, references, YouTube's qualities of sound. So you can just continue to scroll. So this is just to give an idea of what certain things might touch upon, but there's always code examples. So this is one of the lessons. So basically the way I kind of broke this up is it's chunked out in kind of 3 main portions. There's sort of the introduction of the code, and then there's a bit more in regards to a beyond coding kind of concept. So thinking about in this lesson of how we could make a accessibility of something that is sound based to people who maybe are unable to experience sound in a specific way. So that being the deaf community, the hard of hearing community. And so this specific lesson takes a look at the artist Christina Sun Kim and the work she has done around closed captions. She is a deaf artist who does a lot of work sort of about the deaf experience and specifically their relationship with things like sound and music. I think I'd like to highlight, you can stop there, Sige, thank you, was this idea of coding with care. And this came also through some discussions with Louisa, my mentor. This idea that coding is really about people and decisions that people make and people who interact with the code that you make. So the idea of care kind of became a central idea throughout this unit specifically, of that we are designing with care, we are making decisions with care, and that care needs to kind of take into consideration the people who are going to use our code, because ultimately that's what the coding is about. So code doesn't kind of exist in a vacuum. It does exist as a result of people making decisions, and those decisions will ultimately go on to affect and impact the people who use their work and the things that are made with that code. And I think through things like design, through accessibility, I tried to highlight that to get students thinking about this idea of being conscious of the decisions they're making, and to hopefully get them to make more careful decisions that will ultimately impact the people using the code that they write.
Hey, I'm Olivia, Olivia Ross. I'm a video artist, programmer, poet, information worker, from Jamaica, Queens. And a lot of my work these days is really considering power and media theory, and really thinking about care work across transmission culture. And specifically thinking about like video, faith, and power, and how that has to do with memory and how we remember things and how we safeguard things. And so I do a lot of work with both archives and also with computing technologies in my video practice. This fall and summer, Kelly and I have been working on a project through the Cybernetic Opera Company called Cybernetic Theater in a Box. The Cybernetic Opera Company, which is currently Kelly and myself, is an experimental performance group and pedagogical collective. And we specifically arranged ourselves in this way, both holding performance and pedagogy together, because we wanted, even kind of in the like thesis of the work that we're doing, for there to be an implicit connection between like teaching and learning, and that conversation, and also in performance, because that is kind of in a kernel, like a lot of what the philosophies that pushed us are about, is kind of deconstructing the dichotomy between who the audience is, who the performer is, and kind of both in the concepts of a normal theater, and also thinking about that in the concept of computers. And so who's the audience or the user, and who's the programmer or the actor.
Basically, curriculum materials for youth that expand what we commonly think of as software arts education. And it really starts them with movement practices and like really understanding the terms that are being used.
In a brief overview, through the Processing Teaching Fellowship of 2023, Kelly and I really got to dig deep into a lot of different modalities of engaging with the ideas that we were researching.
Honing in on writing code and building out these materials so that we can run the workshops as we want them.
We started kind of from that place, and through consulting with our mentor, Lajne McMillan, who gave us a lot of really great advice and seeds for kinds of similar organizations that we should speak with, through talking to college students at Cooper Union, the New School, Hunter College, and NYU, and kind of probing them to see like what are the things that they feel like are missing, what would be intimidating about engaging with a kind of curriculum like this for the first time, and in using that information to kind of inform our spiral and inform the ways that we were designing.
This was sort of a nice opportunity for me to really kind of like fine tune it and hone it in. I am definitely looking to kind of get it out there. Right now, this year, I'm part of the CS for All Leads program through the New York City Department of Ed. So I'm planning on reaching out and asking to be able to do some kind of like workshop or at least just present the work that I've done. Last year, I went through the Hunter CS continuing education certification program. So I'm one of like a handful of teachers right now in the state who's certified to teach computer science at the K through 12 level. So that's a network that I'm also going to try and kind of reach out to and just make them aware. I know P5 is a very popular tool in those circles as a teaching tool. Through some processing foundation, creative coding fests is also a place where I probably intend to do some workshops and just kind of create some awareness around it.
We're trying to get students to kind of glitch and confront is that kind of like transmitter one to all relationship, and to think of ways of relating that are more local and peer-to-peer and distributed. And so I think being able to walk into a classroom and like not yet know how to sit and have to navigate a choreography of where to sit, who to talk to, of having a teacher that doesn't necessarily stand in the board, but stands among you and walks around with you and does the activities with you, in that way, I think kind of just makes things feel like more fertile, and less scary. Well, scary, I think also, yeah, I think one of the things that was probably the biggest like thing that we realized upon making it is that a lot of the ideas of like what made computer science approachable wasn't necessarily about what made it less difficult, but what made it more tangible, which was something, especially when working with older students who don't necessarily need a beginner's curriculum, but they do need an accessible curriculum, and kind of detaching like the idea of like easy versus hard from accessible versus inaccessible, because those are actually different things. And oftentimes a lot of like the experiences that we had in more like accessible coding spaces ended up being alienating because of this like infantilization of their audience. So I think being in a third space also allowed us to kind of confront the students, both also as experts of their own experience, and like engage with them as like not just students, but also like people who have things to teach us as well.
Just
I
like
love
a
that.
little bit on that, I think Liam, like your curriculum does a really good job at like meeting students at like an intermediate level, like where they are, and I really respect that. Like not like there is so much beginner curriculum out there, and I like that you pointed out that, you know, like this is where I want to meet people without like watering it down, like, and like I think that your work is like really expanding um like the audience and of who can do like an intermediate project with processing, and it would really help students envision like where processing can take their sound projects.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely something my aim was. I just love what you two like the when you first talked about your project when we all met, like throwing out theater as sort of the medium in which to engage in coding. I was just totally fascinated by that, and it's love hearing about what you're saying. I think two things you said, Kelly, of like you had 2 weeks to like put on a performance. Like theater to me is like the assessment is just like, okay, we got a show to put on, and like the curtain's going to open, and it's just like that's the end point, and it's either going to be amazing or it's going to be a train wreck, or but it's just like there's a very finite point of theater that I think sort of goes well in terms of like a teaching sort of format where it's just like, okay, this is the test, like get on stage and do it. And then Olivia, what you're saying about like this third space and like real world, it's like theater is not, there's I don't can't think of another medium where it's like has to be in person almost, like it sort of forces you into that space of like you can't do theater remotely, you know, like it can't be something you do over your phone or over a Zoom. It's just like it absolutely has to be a real world space in which you engage in. And I think, yeah, that is a very interesting way to kind of force people to engage in code. or not force, but allow them to create in code.